I'll join the palms. And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Nice to see you all here. Thanks for showing up on the eve of, is eve only nighttime or can it be eve? Eve is nighttime, right? Day of. So this could be the eve of what everyone's talking about with the storm coming, right? So this is the eve of that. That's the proper way to say it, because I'm really concerned about saying things properly. That's why I do this, just to make sure my grammar is correct.
I can teach you the English.
Thank you, Nirmal. Where would I be without Nirmal? It really is all of you that I learned from. You think it's the other way around, but yeah. No, what I was going to say was on the eve of this, the storm, and I'm hearing and I'm seeing, and it's coming. Apparently, I'm not denying that or doubting that or anything. But what just popped into my head this morning was like everybody's kind of prepping for this big storm, right? Getting ready for it. I mean, apparently, I'm not saying there's not going to be tremendous damage, or I'm not downplaying any of that, right? But they're talking about maybe 24 hours worth or something like this, right? And we're all looking at relatively the same news and hearing relatively the same thing, right? They're not talking about some storm that's going to come through and do years of damage. We're looking at maybe 24, 48 hours of stuff, and everyone's so amped up about it. Are you that way about your life every day? The storm that's in your life? Because your life is chaos, potentially. It's an absolute storm. And we just kind of go through it. Not concerned, not worried, not rushing to Home Depot, not stocking up on everything on Amazon. It's just kind of my life's a storm, it's a tornado, it's a hurricane every day, but I'm just going to keep allowing it to go on, and I'm not going to prepare for it at all. I'm just going to let it happen. Day in and day out, month after month, year after year. But a weather storm comes in and has the world so doing everything they can for 72 hours to make sure they're ready for it. So the question is, what do you do every day to make sure you're ready for the storm that is your life? Because if our lives, and by our lives I mean our minds, if our minds were not a storm, we're not like a hurricane, we're not chaotic, we're not hectic, we're not causing tons of pain and suffering every day in our hearts. If our minds weren't doing those things, a place like this wouldn't exist and none of us would be here. So, do we prepare and take care of our minds the same way we do for a storm that's coming? And if not, ask yourself, why not? Maybe it's because you've just gotten used to it. And you just said, yeah, my mind's just going to be a mess, so I'll just deal with it. I'll do meditation once a week and that'll fix it. Prepare every single day as if there's a storm in your head. Because for most people I know, there is. Every day. Don't get used to that. Don't accept that as just the way. Prepare for it. And work diligently to be ready every single day. Every single day is a battle. I mean, for me as a practitioner, that's how I treat every morning. Every morning is like you're going into battle. But the battle is with your own head. It's your own mind. It's not anything external. And if your mind is cared for, if your mind is steady and calm and still, then it allows your heart to be the same way. And if your head is steady and clear and your heart is open and willing to just embrace everything that is going on, there's no storm. There's just a bunch of stuff flying around you. But it doesn't ruin you. And, that's to me what I see most glaring and interesting in the last 24 hours when I try to relate everyday life to our practice and our minds. How do you prepare for it? So with that, I will make sure all of our drains are cleared out and ladders are off the roof, and we'll get to test out all this stuff we just put on this 97-year-old building, and hopefully it works. If not, I'll be calling you all to bring sandbags over. So thanks for showing up. Yeah, you guys thought I was kidding. Thanks all for being here. We'll start with a meditation practice. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. And to those joining virtually, glad you're here. Thanks for showing up. With the practice, nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working? Is it not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you are on a cushion, often helps sliding to the front third, pushing the stomach forward, allows the back to straighten, shoulders are relaxed. If you're on a bench or a chair, however you are seated, trying to sit up straight if comfortable, relaxing the shoulders if comfortable. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, do not expect anything from this practice. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. Start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Return to breath. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgments from the practice. Just sitting. Breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important, the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize whatever you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, it's not from anything I said. It's not from how we sit, or the hands across the legs. It's not from the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada. It means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakening. He's a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. what that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's it. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It's direct perception into the present moment. And that present moment is very often filled with chaos. And so this practice is learning to be with the chaos as it arises, because it will always arise. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. Simply sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do in every moment. Because this creates your reality. And how you respond to each moment creates your reality. We spend so much time trying to fix, change, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us. So much time trying to ponder why everybody else does what they do. Wanting them to change, wanting them to stop, wanting them to do this. This practice is setting down all of that. And realizing it's hard enough to control how you respond to life. If for some reason we have this idea that we should be able to convince other people how they should respond to life. And that for me is why, again, the last couple of days it was on my mind, but especially this morning based on a few things people said. And I'm very serious about preparing each day like it's a hurricane. Because it will occur in your life. That is the first thing the Buddha said. He was not lying. He was a pretty smart dude. He said life is filled with suffering. Doesn't mean it has to be tremendous, traumatic suffering. It could be little things and tremendous, traumatic suffering and everywhere in between. That's the first thing he said. But can we be with it as it arises, and can we prepare ourselves for it? And that's what practice is. That's what the dedicated meditation practice is about. That's what actually studying and looking and reading what the Buddha actually said. That's putting these things into your life. Not just showing up to a Buddhist place and doing some Buddhist thing. You have to do this stuff in your life if you want this stuff to actually work. Yeah. So with that, I'll pause. For me, I really just prefer to respond to questions. And again, to those joining virtually, welcome. There's a chat box on your screen somewhere. Feel free to say hello, chime in, any thoughts or questions. If you put them there, I'll do my best to respond virtually as well. So we'll use the rest of our brief time this morning for questions, thoughts, anything you're sitting with. Yes, sir.
You get me every time, Jeff. Like with the dropping the expectations thing.
Yeah.
And like not expecting anything to happen, and then something does happen.
Yes.
Just appreciate that.
Oh, you mean not expect anything from the meditation,
Yeah,
and then something does happen.
right.
You like how it's set that bar pretty high, huh?
You get me every time.
I'm glad. I'm glad. Glad it worked. I always tell you don't believe anything I say. So. What else? Questions, thoughts?
What are the Buddhist teachings around children? At what age is a good time to start meditating?
This age. So the question is, what are the Buddhist thoughts around children? That's a very broad question. You narrowed it down to around what's the time they should start meditating. Yeah. So let me start with the first piece, just some general thoughts. The Buddha liked children, right? I think there's a lot of maybe confusion around this topic, I think, depending upon what you read or how it's shared or what culture it comes from. The Buddha himself and the disciples at the time being a monastic culture, right? So they were renouncing themselves from the kind of worldly home life that we might see it. But that doesn't mean that was what the Buddha was saying everybody should do. It was just their chosen path as monks and nuns. You come out of that monastic culture and you have a couple thousand years of Buddhists raising families and being parents and loving children and all those things. So what I would imagine any parent in this room could tell you, or any expecting parents can expect, is that your children are going to be your greatest teachers. They're going to teach you patience. They're going to teach you just an endless sense of love and compassion that my understanding is beyond words. Right? They will challenge you. They will push you. They will annoy you. They will drive you crazy. They will make you question every single thing in your life. And at the end of the day, you will still love them. Right? So, good luck with all that ahead. It's the first thing. The second thing is around meditation. I've been leading meditation with kids for 20 years almost. And I think that if a child is old enough to learn to brush their teeth, then they're old enough to learn to take some deep breaths. And the metaphor I always use is brushing your teeth, combing our hair. These are things we do every day. And so any habits and patterns that, healthy habits and habitual patterns, behaviors that children can learn, I think are beneficial. I will say, kind of as a last thought, is that there's a topic often, and even in our family sangha for years early on, we had some diehard, people wanting to push Buddhism onto their children. You know how many people end up at the Dharma Bum Temple because religion was pushed on them? So the last thing I think that Buddhists or those who practice Buddhism should do is push anything on children. You get all these Buddhists now raising children who want to push Buddhist stuff at them. They're going to run away from Buddhism just like you all ran away from whatever you may have run away from. So I think you want to be very delicate around that. Thich Nhat Hanh is very clear about Buddhist teachings to children. Be very careful and sensitive to that. But the teachings of kindness and compassion and everything that you would already embody, hopefully as a parent anyways, you're going to share with your child. So, but I would refrain from putting them in robes and shaving their head and having them abide by precepts, until they're at least 8. So, even historically, and traditions are different, but historically it's a safe age to say that in many Buddhist traditions around the age of 12, they wouldn't even, children who were raised in Buddhist cultures where becoming a monk or nun is really an honor. It wouldn't even happen until the age of 12. So, yeah.
Just the point as a reference, Thich Nhat Hanh ordained at 16.
At 16, yeah.
I always feel like it'll be very challenging to get them to do their homework if you teach them emptiness.
Yes. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Yes. And no. Other questions?
During meditation, when you're paying attention to breath, not evaluating breath, but noticing that it's a short breath, long breath. Is that a fair way of doing it?
Is that what was the last part you said? Is that
Is
it?
that the right thing to do?
It is what the Buddha taught to do. So the practice truly from the sutras is to observe sensation of breath. And as you said, if you're taking a short breath, just observe this is a short breath. If you're taking a long breath, observe this is a long breath. Simple awareness and observation of sensation of breath. That's it. Mind wanders, bring it back to sensation of breath. Mind wanders, bring it back to the sensation of breath, regardless of what it wanders to. If it wanders to a pleasant thought, recognize pleasant thought, maybe if you want, come back to sensation of breath. Wanders to unpleasant thought, recognize unpleasant thought if you want, come back to sensation of breath. I often hear a lot of people say, oh, it wandered to a good thought, so I just wanted to stay with that thought. And there's nothing wrong with staying with good thoughts, but that doesn't mean it's meditation. That's just thinking. And meditation is, as Dogen would call it, Zen master, beyond thinking. Meditation is not thinking. Sitting and breathing and thinking is sitting and breathing and thinking. Meditation is a concentration and focus on the present moment. And so the Buddha taught very clearly to use the breath as something to focus on.
But
We don't
not evaluate breath. This was a noisy breath, or this was a good, just noticing it.
just notice it, because as soon as you label it as a lousy breath, then your mind gets into duality and, judgment. And but the question really ultimately is, why is this practice even there to begin with? And like you just said, not to notice, oh, this was a lousy breath. So you go through your day, you see a person, just notice the person, as opposed to, oh, this is a lousy person, or this is a good person. This is a human who's suffering. So the practice of meditation is then meant to bring yourself off of the cushion or whatever form of meditation you're doing and into the world. So you can be present with each experience as it arises, not judging it, not labeling it, just experience. That's the practice. Yeah. What else?
This isn't a question. I was in Target the other day, and in the section where they sell the sport equipment and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
they had a huge pile of meditation cushions,
Nice.
really big ones, and I just thought, wow, this is amazing. Things are changing,
They are changing. Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I still remember this would have been about, I don't know, maybe 16 years ago, and when we were downtown Temple and walking by like Fifth and Market, if any of you remember, I think it was at Fifth and Market, but there was a big Z gallery, and in the window there was this Samantabhadra Bodhisattva statue. That one, right? A different style, but that statue. And I remember thinking, wow, Z Gallery is carrying Samantabhadra Bodhisattva statues. And then realized they had no idea who or what it was. It was just some cool Asian looking thing, so they put it in the window, you know. And as the years have progressed, it's kind of been like that with a lot of stuff. And you know, historically in Buddhism, what enters a country first, before the actual teachings, is the images of the Buddha. And then from there, everything kind of trickles down. So, you know, 15 years ago, maybe it would have been rare and newer to see a yoga mat at Target, right? Now you'll see meditation stuff. So it's out there, you know, heavily commercialized, which is gross, but it's out there, and it is America, and we got to start somewhere, you know. So if they want to put a Samantabhadra Bodhisattva in the Z Gallery window at 5th and Market, then God bless them.
I don't foresee that at Target anytime soon.
Not soon, but eventually, yeah.
More of a personal question. How does you're always wearing black now?
Yeah.
Is there a meaning?
So why do I always wear black? Let's see, let me sum this up. When I came back from monastery life in January 06, one of the things that I loved most, or appreciated most, or just embodied the most was we wore the same thing every single day. And I was somebody who grew up always needing and wanting a lot of money and buying nice clothes and spending hours from store to store to store shopping, going out for like a Saturday, and I made sure I went out early in the afternoon to find the perfect shirt, spent $200 on it just to wear it because I wanted to make sure it looked perfect, because all those things really matter, you know. And years of all that stuff, all the shoes, all the belts, all the shirts, everything matched. The black with the black, the brown with the brown, depending upon what season it was, you know. What did the, you know, whatever magazine tell you should wear at this time of year? Following all that stuff. And as stuck in the matrix as everybody else is. And not even realizing how miserable I was spending 3 hours looking for a shirt. And then just running around all night making sure everybody noticed my shirt. Because I'd spent 3 hours and $200 on it, you know? So then you get to Taiwan, and we had a black robe that we wore for formal ritual stuff, and I wasn't a monk, so I wasn't in a robe every day per se, but it was the gray pants I used to always wear and a gray top. And I had 2 of those. That was it. You wore them every single day. Wash one, wear one. We also washed our clothes in a bucket on a washboard. And that was phenomenal. I mean, what a beautiful practice for a kid who grew up just handing laundry to his mother, you know, to actually wash my own clothes. Talk about, you know, trying to wipe the privilege out of my life. And it was really beautiful to do that practice. So it was really nice when you get up. You got up at 4:30 in the morning. The board would hit. You had 15 minutes to brush your teeth, splash water in your face, put on your robe, and get in line. 15 minutes. I used to spend 15 minutes just trying to figure out which socks I was going to wear. Right? Some of you still do. And no judgment, of course. And so then we get there, to same clothes every single day. So when I left, after 11 months, came back here, I initially told myself that I was going to wear that same thing every day here. But I decided that, you know, I wasn't a monk. I was integrating back into this culture and this way of life. And I decided I wasn't going to wear the whole thing every day. So I chose the shirt. And I wore that same shirt every single day that I wore out there for 2 years. If I went to a wedding, if I went to a bar mitzvah, if I went to a school, if I went grocery shopping, if I went to a Charger game with family, everywhere. Maybe I had shorts on, maybe I had jeans on, maybe I had nice pants on, but I wore that same shirt every day for 2 years. As a reminder to myself that I wasn't going to get stuck again in this world of thinking what we wear matters. Because that's how I grew up, and that made my life hell. So I then, after about 2 years doing that, started taking meditation pretty consistently into schools in a secular way. And I realized the dude who just spent a year in a Buddhist monastery, now was running a Buddhist temple, but was doing secular meditation in schools, shouldn't go into schools with a shaved head and a monk-looking shirt on every day. So after 2 years, I finally surrendered and took the shirt off. My mother was thrilled, you know. And at that time, I made the decision that I was going to kind of keep the same theme in a way of wearing the same thing in essence every single day, but it would vary a little bit and look more like normal clothes to people. So I didn't look so odd, didn't stand out, wasn't trying to draw the attention. And that same thing that I've worn every day has changed a couple times over the last 15 years, you know. I think maybe like a year ago, somebody pointed out that I finally got a new vest. You know, it's again, all driven by my mother, you know, that the old one had too many holes in it. So now I just wear the same. It's super simple. It's just what I wear. You know, the color of it, I just ended up picking black and then went with that. I also love Johnny Cash. So, yeah. Makes my life easy. We got enough stuff to worry about. You know? Thinking how you look should be the last. Birth, aging, sickness, death. That's what he said. That's what we get. We're born, we age, we'll get sick, and we will die. How much of your time do you really want to spend making sure what your outside looks like compared to how much time you're going to spend making sure your inside is okay? And the less time you spend worried about what your outside looks like, the more time you have to take care of your inside. You only got 24 hours a day. So, what else?
Just out of curiosity about I have wondered sometimes it's hot here. You're still wearing the vest of it doesn't really matter for anything.
Yeah, I mean, the practice is to be okay in every situation. You know, the practice is to recognize that we spend our entire lives. It's too hot. I need the air on. It's too cold. I need the heat on. I need to roll the window down. I need to roll the window up. I need to change a channel. I need a different song. We spend our whole lives adjusting to every little thing that makes us a tiny bit seemingly unpleasant. But in fact, the only thing that's unpleasant is your mind. So all of these things are practices. And again, for me as a practitioner, I try my best to try to practice every single thing that I have learned through Buddhist practice and embody that in my life. And it was the same thing out there. We didn't, it's hot in Taiwan. You don't change what you wear just because of the weather. Now, if it snowed, I'm not saying I'm not putting a jacket on. I'm just, I don't wake up every day and look at the temperature and walk outside and think, well, should I wear this or that today? Again, it goes into the discriminatory mind that gets wrapped up in all these things. This practice is recognizing that we spend so much of our lives trying to feel good as opposed to trying to be with life as it is. So, yeah.
So like along related lines, when you're evaluating something like, let's say you're thinking about changing jobs or something like that. Kind of to take this to that situation, it would be like, well, are both of these equivalent? Because they're both situations and basically the practice is adjusting to either or neither. So maybe you just stay where you are, like.
They're both exactly the same.
Yeah, okay.
This is what the emptiness practice actually is. They matter because it's a livelihood and you probably want to be able to eat and pay some basic expenses and things like that. So working is important to you and to most people, right? So having a job is probably a good thing, but ultimately what they are, this is where you bring the emptiness practice. This is everything I'm talking about with the clothes. This is, if you read the Diamond Sutra, the Heart Sutra, this is what it's about, is understanding that the longer we stay at one job, for example, we start building up stories, resentments, people we don't like, bosses we don't want to work for. We go into judgment mode. And then the fantasy kicks in of like, oh, if I get a new job, that's going to be so much better. And after 2 years, you know what's going to happen there? The boss you don't like, the stories of the people, the resentment. It's the same cycle over and over and over again. And then that job that seems so new and exciting and fresh is now miserable again. But if you can train the mind to just appreciate and have gratitude for where you are, and this applies to your job, applies to relationships, applies to the food we eat, applies to the clothes we wear, applies to every single thing in our lives. 100%. Now, I will say, at least from the Buddhist lens, what the job is, there are very specific teachings on right livelihood and what impact maybe the job that we're doing has on our lives and the world around us. So I'm not suggesting that if we're in a job that is harming us or others, that taking a job that doesn't harm us or others isn't a better choice. But on a very fundamental level, most people want to leave things just because they don't like it anymore. And they think that the other one's going to be better. That's why relationships fail. And a job is a relationship. Does that make sense? Yeah. What else? Yeah.
If our external appearance doesn't matter, I think about like our internal suffering and how we're meditating to like alleviate that. Is the importance on that like so that we as a species don't like destroy the world? like when I think about animals and plants and like we're just living amongst those. Like, what is the importance of suffering if we're all going to die?
I think there's a beautiful question in there. I'm just not. I didn't get it yet. So I understand. Rephrase your question part.
Sure.
Because you went from external like appearance, meditation, suffering, animals. We're all going to die anyways.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about how just as a species, as like a human species, our external appearance doesn't matter.
Right.
Buddha taught, everyone suffers through life.
Yeah.
We're eventually gonna die. Like, what's the importance of suffering? Is it so that we don't, like, if we continue to suffer, there will be war, we might kill other things on the planet. Like, what is the importance on that, like alleviating that eternal suffering?
So, yeah, the importance of, and this may or may not address that specifically, but there's a joke I always say years ago. A friend of mine said that he had learned Buddhism 20-something years ago initially, opened up the book, page 1 said life is suffering, and he's like, well, that sucks. I'm not going to learn about that. 20 years later, reopened Buddhist stuff and realized that there's an understanding to why we suffer and a path that helps us suffer less. So, yes, the Buddha said life is suffering, but it doesn't mean that we should just say, well, we're just going to suffer our whole lives and leave it at that. practice is to understand why are we suffering, right? That's the second noble truth. 3 poisons: greed, anger, ignorance. And I think at the heart of your question is the 3 poisons of greed, anger, and ignorance, the cause of our suffering, which again is the second noble truth. The practice is to cultivate generosity to overcome greed, compassion to overcome anger, and wisdom to overcome ignorance. And if we practice generosity, compassion, and wisdom, we will suffer less. Others will suffer less. This planet will suffer less. So that's the teachings isn't just to be like, well, we all suffer, let's meditate, and then we're going to die. I mean, that is going to happen. We all suffer, let's meditate, we're going to die. Those 3 things are like given. Yeah? But underneath all of that is, okay, well, let's suffer less. That's what the Buddha wanted people to do. Now, at his time, it was very different. He was teaching people to free themselves from suffering the only way that people at that time knew to free themselves from suffering, which was to free themselves from the cycle of rebirth. Because in India, 2,500 years ago, they weren't just living one life and then being like, hope I go to heaven or hell, and that's it. That would have been crazy to people back then. We would have been cuckoo. You fast forward to today, and people believe in rebirth, and they're like, man, you're nuts. That's some weird stuff. But that's what everybody, for the most part, at that time believed. So he wanted people to be free from suffering, which was to be free from the cycle of birth and death. People don't come here on a Saturday morning or whatever, you come here to make sure you have a good rebirth. Did you show up here being like, yo, I hope I have a good rebirth? Right? It's like, I want to suffer less. I want to be happy. So you don't have to believe in rebirth. Rebirth is really irrelevant, I think, from a day-to-day practice standpoint. I tend to look at rebirth as like every moment being a rebirth anyways. So what I focus on is how can we suffer less as humans? And how does our suffering less then impact the world around us? Who here has a dog? Lots of you. All right, I won't pick on any of you. Who here has a dog and loves their dog? Who here has a dog, loves their dog, and at least once in your entire dog's existence yelled at your dog? All right?
Like this morning?
Not this morning. I wasn't trying to embarrass anyone, but right? But so we yell at our dog occasionally because you're suffering. Not because of the dog. Maybe the dog ate something they shouldn't have eaten and you're yelling at the dog, but in most cases, that's probably not why you raised your hand as the person who once in a while yelled at your dog. You yelled at your dog because you were suffering because you didn't like what the dog was doing. If you never suffer, if you were free from suffering, if you roam around every single day with a heart that is filled with endless compassion, you would never yell at your dog. That makes sense? Yeah. Just give your dog treats. So I hope that in some way addresses the question. I mean, it's a pretty deep, question, and I think also like when I say things, and I'll kind of close with this thought that as the Buddha taught, birth, aging, sickness, and death, those are pretty harsh to hear it that way, especially if you're here for the first time, you've never heard it. It's like birth, aging, sickness, and death. Well, that sucks. But there's a whole bunch of stuff in between. Lots of beauty, lots of joy, lots of happiness, lots of celebration, lots of moments that really make you feel alive. And you are alive. So that's what we want to feel. We want to practice to move away from the suffering. To enjoy each moment. Right? Bettina's been leading a class on Wednesdays for the last, maybe a couple months, but loving kindness, compassion, joy, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. So this practice of feeling joy, feeling life, feeling happiness is super important. Okay. So I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to Kristen's father during his time of rebirth and her family and friends who suffer at this time. All right, a few quick announcements. Thanks all for showing up. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up this temple 17 years ago, initially downtown, to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not nuns, we're not monks, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those of you who show up. Every night we have different practices going on, different people leading from different Buddhist traditions. Every Thursday, 5 o'clock, we do, I think, still probably one of the best things around here. It's a food redistribution program. We prepare food and we feed people who sleep on the streets. So, anytime you think your life really sucks and kind of lack gratitude for everything that you have in your life, feed people who are sleeping on the sidewalk every night, and it tends to really change you. They'll probably live without the sandwich, but we're the ones that need that waking up. So for anyone dealing with addiction, we have recovery classes just about every night. So always something going on. Thanks all for being here. Be well.